Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. A bomb squad and hostage negotiators were sent out today in New York City, all because a man wanted some documents to be delivered to the United Nations. President Biden unveils his plan to combat the CCP virus this winter. At the heart of the program, vaccines, boosters, and tests. Congress members on Capitol Hill are working to teach young people the truth about communism. They tell us why they see this as a bigger threat now than ever before. In an exclusive interview with British politician Nigel Farage, former President Donald Trump shares his views on the Queen, the United States withdrawal from Afghanistan, and whether he'd run for office again. And a new round of sanctions on Belarus. The U.S., the U.K., the European Union, and Canada are asking the Belarusian regime to stop smuggling migrants across its border with the European Union. Tensions are high at the United Nations headquarters in New York City. Earlier today, the bomb squad and hostage negotiators had to step in.
The United Nations headquarters was closed down for several hours today because a man was seen walking up and down this street with a shotgun in his hands. The man was wearing a red hoodie and was walking up and down the front gate of the UN with the shotgun in his hands. When negotiators approached him, he held the gun to his chin, demanding that some documents get delivered to the UN.
Based on statements he made, we knew early on that this did not appear to be terror-related. He had some papers he wanted delivered to the UN. The dialogue went back and forth about how we might be able to accommodate his request and bring the incident to a peaceful conclusion. Ultimately, members of the Emergency Service Unit took possession of the papers and were able to deliver them to the UN. As a result, the individual put down his shotgun and was taken into custody without incident.
The individual had no criminal record in the US. He came from Florida and was staying at a hotel close to the UN headquarters. Investigators say they don't know what message the documents were supposed to convey.
The paperwork there were a number of documents. They didn't have any specific meaning that was related to anything related to terrorism, but they were medical papers and some other documents. Nothing that told a story.
The individual was taken into custody and then brought to a medical facility. Arian Pastar, NTD News, New York.
The House votes to avert a government shutdown. Congress members passed a spending bill today that funds the government through February 18th and avoids a short-term shutdown after midnight Friday. The House passed the bill 221 to 212, with just one Republican voting for it. The government will keep running at current spending levels while adding $7 billion to aid Afghanistan evacuees. Republicans voting against the bill want Congress to take a hard stand against President Biden's vaccine mandates. And they say they would not support spending bills that include irresponsible spending increases and extreme policies. But it's unclear if the bill will pass the Senate before the deadline of Friday midnight. If it fails, it could mean a short-term shutdown into the weekend. And President Biden has launched a campaign aimed at suppressing an expected winter wave of COVID-19. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on the president's plan.
The White House expects the number of COVID-19 cases to rise this winter, so President Biden's unveiled a plan to suppress the expected wave.
We're expanding our national booster campaign to provide booster shots to all eligible adults.
That was one of several points the president made on Thursday. Also part of the plan, setting up more family vaccination clinics across the country to inoculate children. And if you've already gotten vaccinated, expect calls from your pharmacy when you're booster shot eligible.
Pharmacies will send millions of texts and emails to remind their customers to return for the booster shots because they know who got the booster shot at CVC.
Biden's probably referring to CVS, which is a pharmacy chain. Vaccinating and testing are at the heart of Biden's winter plan. Specialist in gastroenterology and COVID-19 researcher Dr. Sabine Hazin tells me prevention is one path, early treatment is another. In a statement, she said, we need to focus on both. It is also important to realize that as this virus mutates, our best defense is a strong immunity in our gut. Therefore, gut health is very important. Keeping vitamin D levels up, keeping stress down, exercising, cutting down alcohol, coffee, sugars, increasing fermented foods, yogurts, and cutting down fats becomes crucial. Biden says that by next month, at-home test kits will be free to pick up at designated sites. Also next month, the president says he'll require private insurance plans to cover the costs of at-home test kits. Biden's plan will also tighten testing rules for travelers entering the country. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
And an update on the Omicron variant. Colorado is now the third state to detect this variant. State officials say a woman who recently traveled to South Africa tested positive for Omicron. A health official said the fully vaccinated woman is experiencing mild symptoms. And today in Washington, D.C., members of Congress introduced a bill to teach young people about communism. They're concerned the lack of education about communism has led America's youth to support an ideology the Congress members call inherently evil. NTD's Melina Weiskup brings us more from Capitol Hill.
A group of Congress members expressing why they say the specter of communism is a bigger threat now than ever before and how to overcome this threat. One Congress member says it's every single person's responsibility to take action.
It is now our responsibility. Nobody else, every single one of you, it's in your hands.
The Congress members are introducing a bill called the Crucial Communism Teaching Act, an effort to teach America's young people the legacy of communism.
The Soviet Union is gone, but that legacy has lived on. Started with the radicalism of Marxist-infused radicalism in the 60s, up until the CRT radicalism of today. It's all from the same vein.
The threat of communism, the evil of communism, the inherent evil of communism.
An ideology that's led to countless deaths and ongoing persecutions against people of faith. The Chinese communist regime today still jailing, torturing, and killing Falun Dafa practitioners and Uyghurs.
My sister has been detained since September 2018. More than 3 years now, 3 years, 3 months. I have no idea where she is. The conscience of the world, conscience of the humanity is at test, and we will be failing it. So we must act.
The lead sponsor of this bill, Congresswoman Maria Salazar, comes from a family who fled communist Cuba. She tells us the young generation put Fidel Castro in power because they didn't understand the true nature of communism.
Very concerned that future generations, my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, will say the same thing to us. You didn't teach us how bad this was, and unfortunately, socialism and communism is very pernicious. Once it's in, it's like a pit bull. It grabs you and is not going to let you go. It's an attack on the human fiber. It's an attack on humanity. It's evil. It's very evil, and it's being so evil, it only destroys the human soul and everything with it.
And Congressman Jacob says Americans are more vulnerable to this threat now, as principles of faith and family are under attack.
Our faith has been rocked. People believing in God and going in church is weakened right now. Our family structures in a lot of places are weakened.
A 2020 poll reveals that 1 in 5 millennials views communism favorably. And there are even more, 1 in 3 from Generation Z, who buy into the ideology.
Socialism is very appealing to young people. It's very utopian. It's this wonderful idea that we can all have what we want and it will just work, except it never works because it goes directly against human nature. It is a subversive effort. It started with the Soviets. The Soviets have been doing it for decades.
And if this bill does pass through Congress, it will lead to a model curriculum being written and offered to schools that will teach the younger generation about the dangers of the communist ideology. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis announced today that he's proposing more than $100 million in funding to support Florida's National Guard and also establish a Florida State Guard. He says this new budget proposal aims to reinforce vital emergency response services.
The $100 million budget proposal includes $87.5 million to expand Florida's existing readiness center and establish 3 new armories, $8.9 million for existing armory maintenance, and $5.1 million to support Florida National Guardsmen seeking higher education.
We also want to make sure that we have the flexibility and the ability needed to respond to events in our state in the most effective way possible. And some of that will require us to be able to have access and be able to use support in ways that are not encumbered by the federal government or don't require federal government.
Governor Ron DeSantis is also pledging $3.5 million to reestablish the Florida State Guard. It will be a civilian volunteer force that will assist the National Guard in state-specific emergencies. 22 other states have a state guard recognized by the federal government. Other parts of the new budget include $12.2 million in scholarships for children and spouses of deceased or disabled veterans, $3.6 million to improve base infrastructure, and $2.2 million for a new headquarters for the National Guard counter-drug program.
We want to be able to have a quick response capability, and reestablishing the Florida State Guard will allow civilians from all over the state to be trained in the best emergency response techniques and have the ability to mobilize very, very quickly. And this is something that many other states have utilized.
The governor says that as a veteran, he really appreciates what service members do in Florida and that he's committed to supporting the military.
The New York City Council will vote next week on a bill that would allow non-citizens to vote in municipal elections. But the state's Republicans are promising legal action if the bill is passed. NTD's Shen Yun gives us the details.
I'm here at New York City Hall, where GOP representatives are pledging action about the voting bill currently under consideration by the City Council. If passed, the bill could allow over 800,000 non-citizens to vote. To put that number in context, in last month's general election, Mayor-elect Eric Adams won with just over 270,000 votes, a mere fraction of 800,000. New York GOP Chairman Nick Langworthy says the party will be taking legal action if the bill is passed, which it most likely will be.
The court of law is where we will start, and we'll follow our legal experts' advice when the time comes in going to whatever court, whether it's federal, state, federal or state courts, whatever is necessary to stop this dead.
The bill, backed by New York City Democrats, would supersede the state constitution, which says you must be a U.S. citizen to vote in elections. It would give green card and work visa holders the right to vote in local elections for mayor, city comptroller, public advocate, borough president, and council members.
Foreign citizens who are enfranchised in other countries, who are lawful citizens elsewhere in the world, can have a significant impact on elections governing New York City's long-term property taxes and debt liability, and basically what the city's going to do for the next generation of New Yorkers.
Langworthy says this could create a risk of foreign interference in elections.
A foreign actor, which many are headquartered right here with the United Nations, could bring people here for the sole purpose to become voters and influence the outcome of our elections. Now, that could affect races for Congress down the road. It could affect races for our state legislature, our statewide offices, and our city government.
He added that New York would likely set a precedent for the rest of the country. We spoke to Councilmember Adonis Rodriguez, who proposed the bill. He said New York should set an example for other states.
New York City is ready to be a role model, where we recognize the value of the workers, their contribution, and we are ready to give the dignity and respect to those individuals that has green cards, that has working permits to vote in the local elections.
The vote for the bill will take place on December 9th. Shen Yun, NTD News.
British politician Nigel Farage interviewed former President Donald Trump in a GB exclusive broadcast on Wednesday evening. The former UKIP leader visited the former president at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. We've got more from NTD's David English.
In an interview with Nigel Farage, former US President Donald Trump shared his views on a number of topics, including the Queen, the United States withdrawal from Afghanistan, and whether he'd run for office again.
If you look at what's going on in Afghanistan with the withdrawal, which was, I think, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country.
He said, "It's a shame to see some of the events taking place in the United States."
You look at our borders, what's happening with our borders. You look at the cost of energy. We were energy independent, and we no longer are.
Which led to the inevitable question of whether Donald Trump had any plans to run for president again.
If you love the country, you have no choice.
The interview took place at Trump's Mar-a-Lago club in Florida. The former UKIP leader Nigel Farage took prime-time spot on new TV channel GB News in July this year. David English, NTD News.
The Biden administration and 3 U.S. allies are imposing new sanctions on Belarus. They're urging the Belarusian regime to stop suppressing human rights and democracy and stop facilitating illegal crossings on its border with European Union member states. NTD's Arlene Richards has more.
The U.S., Canada, the U.K., and the European Union announced new sanctions on dozens of Belarusian officials, organizations, and companies Thursday. This is the 5th time the U.S. has sanctioned Belarus since the re-election of President Lukashenko in August 2020. And it's the 3rd joint action with the EU, the UK, and Canada this year alone.
It reflects our united determination to act in the face of the increased repression, including the detention of nearly 900 political prisoners, and in response to the Lukashenko regime's callous exploitation of vulnerable migrants from other countries and the regime's orchestration of migrant smuggling into the European Union.
The 4 countries accuse Belarus of bringing migrants from other countries and helping them cross into the European Union, chiefly through Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia. This has led to a migrant crisis on the border between Poland and Belarus. The EU calls this a hybrid attack against the Union using migrants.
We call on the regime to immediately stop using migrants as political weapons. We will hold the regime accountable for its ongoing disregard for democracy, for human rights, for the rule of law.
The U.S. Treasury Department has identified 3 Belarusian aircraft as blocked property and designated 32 individuals and entities, including Belarusian state-owned enterprises and government officials who supported the regime's repression. Meanwhile, the EU imposed travel bans and asset freezes on 17 additional people, including senior border guards, military officials, government representatives, and judges. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
The first family and the second family today lit the national Christmas tree in Washington, D.C. The ceremony took place at the Ellipse near the White House.
All right, is everybody having a good time so far? Let's kick off the evening by lighting up the star of the show, the national Christmas tree. Everybody ready? Let's count down. 5,
4, 3, 2, 1. Merry Christmas!
The White House revealed the theme of this year's Christmas decorations, Gifts from the Heart. Every year, all 50 states, U.S. territories, and D.C. send ornaments for the national Christmas tree. The tradition of lighting up the national Christmas tree dates back to 1923 under President Calvin Coolidge. And coming up, an archbishop in California recently revealed that he's still unvaccinated. He says the vaccine is a personal choice. And self-replicating organisms made in a lab. They're called xenobots. More on what they could be used for when we return. San Francisco city officials continue to encourage residents to get vaccinated against the virus. But the city's archbishop says vaccines are a personal choice. We hear more from NTD's Cynthia Kai.
Archbishop Salvatore Cordeleon of San Francisco recently revealed that he is still unvaccinated despite his support for the vaccine. The San Francisco Archdiocese has spoken positively about the COVID-19 vaccines and encourages churchgoers to get a shot. However, during a podcast interview with the San Francisco Chronicle on December 1st, Archbishop Cordeleon said that his immune system is strong, and his personal physician told him, "It's probably not necessary for me to be vaccinated." The Archdiocese told NTD in an email statement that the Archbishop encourages people to make the decision in accordance with the unique realities of each one's personal medical condition, and that it's always a very personal decision. Meanwhile, city officials continue to encourage people to get vaccinated.
So our message is the same as it was
yesterday to best protect against this variant. Get vaccinated, for goodness sakes, if you have not been vaccinated. Get your booster if you're eligible.
Back in August, Pope Francis, the leader of the Catholic Church, encouraged people to receive the shot, calling it an act of love. Cynthia Kai, NTD News, California.
And despite the discovery of the Omicron variant in the U.S., tourists from all over the world are still visiting New York City for this year's holiday season. One tourist says he's aware of the risks, but the trip is still a dream come true. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
Visitors from all over the world cruise down the streets and view New York City from one of the Big Apple's most famous attractions, the double-decker open-top tour bus. Even with the new Omicron variant spreading across the globe, many are still happy to be here.
We are from Buffalo, New York, and they are from India. They're my parents. They have come all the way from India to see us. Ever since the COVID started, we did not get a chance to meet them. So this is the first time.
We've been waiting to come, so we were really glad that we could come. We've always wanted to come and see the Christmas lights.
Others came to see the Rockefeller Christmas tree in person, and they don't appear to be fazed by the new variant.
Fully vaccinated, so what will be will be.
With be careful things, it's okay. Social distancing.
This is the first time for cities. Always I watch this for TV, for video. Right now it's a dream for me. I'm very happy and excited.
And the president of the Times Square Alliance, which works to improve and promote the famous intersection, has been keeping an eye on the numbers.
We're very excited. Our pedestrian counts over the last weekend exceeded 250,000 people each night. So we're not back completely, but we certainly have gone a long way from the beginning of the pandemic, when almost overnight we went down to 30,000 people.
Before the pandemic, about 365,000 people visited the tourist hotspot daily, according to Harris. He said that many of the online reservations for hotels are coming from overseas, and he expects a great holiday season this year in Times Square. Jason Perry, NTD News, New York.
And there's another dispute between a corporation and a labor union. Major League Baseball and the MLB Players Association. They failed to come to a collective bargaining agreement Wednesday. So could this season's games be at risk? NTD's Faye Quarter tells us more.
Major League Baseball has been shut down. The MLB Players Association and the league's owners were unable to come to a collective bargaining agreement, freezing the $10 billion industry.
This is not about anyone that operates in the industry or any team individually that operates in the industry. It's the rules. It's the rules, and it's what drives them to be the best team the next year or even then. And when we have something in our rules that creates non-competitiveness and creates something that drives down fan interest, all those things need to be addressed and addressed immediately.
Players are now locked out, meaning teams can't trade and sign them. The MLB Players Association tweeted that the shutdown was the owner's choice, plain and simple, specifically calculated to pressure players into relinquishing rights and benefits. They added, "We have been here before, and players have risen to the occasion time and again, guided by a solidarity that has been forged over generations. We will do so again here."
Good afternoon, everybody.
Meanwhile, MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred says the union's demands would threaten the ability of most teams to be competitive and are simply not a viable option.
It's not a good thing for the sport. It's not something that we undertake lightly. We understand it's bad for our business. We took it out of a desire to drive the process forward to an agreement now.
The labor stoppage is the 9th in MLB history and ends 26 years of labor peace. The 2022 baseball season begins on March 31st. If no agreement is reached by then, actual games will be threatened. Faye Quarter, NTD News.
Construction is beginning for a lunar control center and spaceport in Houston, Texas. The plan is to send the first American spacecraft in about 50 years to the moon. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
Intuitive Machines on Thursday held a groundbreaking ceremony at the Houston Spaceport in Texas. Construction will soon begin for its new Lunar Production and Operations Center, which plans to send unmanned spacecraft to the moon every year.
Since the very beginning, we had a vision of bringing together a cluster of aviation and aerospace enterprises that will support the future of commercial spaceflight.
Intuitive Machines is working closely with several universities, such as Rice University, the University of Houston, and Texas A&M.
This will ensure that Intuitive Machines and others that come to the Houston Spaceport are able to recruit nothing but the best of the best. These are truly exciting times, and there is no limit to what can be achieved at the Houston Spaceport.
The new facilities will be over 700,000 square feet and will create about 1,500 jobs. They plan to land their first spacecraft on the moon in the first quarter of 2022. Jason Perry, NTD News.
U.S. scientists have made living organisms that can reproduce. They call them xenobots. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more from one of the xenobot researchers.
Professor of Computer Science Josh Bongard is a lead researcher working on these xenobots. What you see are living organisms made of frog stem cells swimming in a petri dish of more frog cells. Each of these poppy seed-sized creations looks like Pac-Man, and they can reproduce.
And when these 9 Pac-Men move around in the dish, they unintentionally get cells caught in their quote-unquote mouths. They push those cells into larger piles, and larger piles become larger and stronger and faster moving children, which make larger grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And we got as far as great-great-grandchildren.
These xenobots are built from different tissues, which give it different abilities. This is how they're programmed. Bongard says a supercomputer designed the shape of these xenobots, a shape his team says that allows the critters to self-replicate efficiently. The professor says they may eventually be consumable for medicinal use in the human body.
And they're also biocompatible. So it may be in the long term, we're able to create biobots from human cells, and they might actually have medical applications. You might be able to ingest one of these bots and have it do useful work inside the body. In the much more near term, it's probably going to be underwater applications. These are, after all, frog cells. They're perfectly happy in fresh water. You can imagine them inspecting root systems in vertical farms or hydroponic plants, reducing the cost of producing fresh water in desalination facilities, helping with wastewater treatment, sewage.
In the field of bioethics, some ask whether organisms like these could damage the ecosystem by populating out of control. And if they possess the will to live, how should scientists treat them? Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Coming up, and the wave of robberies and crime on the West Coast, California's zero bail policy is facing criticism. This after a judge released several murder suspects awaiting trial. And China introduces ration coupons as currency to buy coal. They've been out of coal since May. We'll have more in just a moment here on NTD News.
The ongoing supply chain crisis? Big tech and other woke companies giving billions to the liberal left? Where will you shop for Christmas? Go to Mammoth Nation. We created a safe place for patriots to spend their money for Christmas and beyond. Shop thousands of products from American and veteran-owned businesses. Shop to the right, give to the right. This is how we fight tyranny. Go to mammothnation.com right now and become a lifetime member today. Use promo code EPIC and save 30%.
See China before communism. Behold, a splendid culture reborn, filled with beauty, majesty, and a powerful message of hope. Come see the performance that has touched the hearts of millions, live on stage, coming to West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami, November 8th through January 9th. Tickets at shenyun.com/SFL.
It's just clear as day. The media, whether it's broadcast, cable, or print media, has become extremely biased. And I started looking online for alternative ways to get information. And I saw an ad for a free trial. And I looked at it and I said, Epoch Times? I mean, come on, this is end of days type of stuff. I mean, what are they going to be talking about here? And I said, well, it's a free trial. Let me dig in. Is it giving me both sides? Is it giving me an objective point of view here? I have looked for opportunities to see where they might be biased, and I don't find it. It has given me a level of trust in media that I didn't think I'd ever get back. I love the Epoch Times because it has renewed my faith in the idea that a reliable, responsible, non-biased source of information is available. And I can say that I love it because of that.
Amid the smash and grab robberies and crime in California, 3 murder suspects were recently released on zero bail while awaiting trial. Silicon Valley police and a mayor comment. NTD's David Lamb reports.
The San Jose Police Officers Association stated that a county judge in California recently released 2 homicide suspects on zero bail. Sean Pritchard, the president of the POA, told NTD that without accountability, it's an assault on public safety.
We saw this play out in Waukesha, Wisconsin here recently. We had an individual that had been involved in a series of crimes. He was recently released on a low bail, zero bail, similar type issue. And what was the result of that? He killed innocent people.
Efrain Anzures, one of the murder suspects, is charged with murder for a hit-and-run road rage incident. Anzures was put on house arrest. His alleged accomplice was released on zero bail.
Additionally, we learned of a third suspect separately from another homicide case that was also recently released, and investigators believe he may actually be in Mexico, fled the area.
The zero bail policy, also known as SB 10 or Proposition 25, eliminates cash bail for certain suspects. People could either be released automatically or based on their assessed risk of committing another crime.
You let this person out. Maybe they don't do something today. What about tomorrow? And then what? What do we tell the next victim's family at that point?
Proponents argue that some suspects can't afford cash bail and that it's an issue of unconstitutionality. Pritchard compared the suspect's release to the recent looting in the Bay Area and Proposition 47 that labels shoplifting of under $950 as misdemeanors rather than burglaries. He said groups like the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, have claimed these changes will make communities safer.
We've seen the very similar connection with Prop 47. We had major groups across this country like the ACLU. You have movie stars. You have legislators who were out there at that time, promoted Proposition 47, said, hey, this is going to make our neighborhoods safer. And clearly that is not the case.
On Tuesday night, the mayor of San Jose stated that he appreciates the purpose of bail reform, but releasing a homicide suspect without bail is outrageous. The pendulum has swung too far, and it's our neighborhoods that endure the most crime that suffer as a result. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
And officials are making efforts to stop smash and grab robberies using license plate readers after a series of organized retail thefts in California. NTD's Eileen Ang brings us more.
The San Jose City Council voted unanimously to install license plate readers, or LPR, to combat the series of smash and grab robberies plaguing California's Bay Area. $250,000 in federal COVID-19 relief money will fund it.
My understanding is the intention of the department is to have some combination of mobile cameras, which are already being deployed on dashboards of patrol vehicles, as well as stationary. And it's going to be, I think, fairly flexible because I think we know that there are hotspots where there may be, for example, drive-by shootings or auto thefts or whatever, where these are particularly valuable. And
the police department intends to make the most out of the technology to tackle crime throughout the city.
The City Council has promised us $250,000 to look into new LPR technology to help us and assist us with getting new technologies, not only for our vehicles, but also fixed points throughout the city of San Jose, busy intersections, areas where there are not a lot of cameras, where this technology can be helpful to solve crimes.
About 10 police vehicles are currently equipped with LPR and so far have been successful in finding stolen vehicles. They hope this new investment will do more.
If there is an ability to detect a gunshot and move a camera to see where that gunshot came from, and maybe we get a plate associated with it, that technology as a whole package can really help us solve that crime. So as of now, it is a successful program, but we're looking at new forward-thinking technologies to expand upon just with this funding alone.
When asked about how LPRs can be implemented while preserving the rights and protections of citizens, the mayor said it won't be a one-size-fits-all approach, as they will take into consideration neighborhoods versus busy intersections. Eileen Ang, NTD News, California.
And coming up, Facebook reveals a Chinese network is operating fake social media accounts. One account has been spreading misinformation related to the pandemic since the summer. Facebook removed hundreds of accounts after receiving reports that a Swiss biologist was fabricated by a Chinese firm. Another tech giant, Twitter, followed suit. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has the story.
A blow to the Chinese propaganda machine. Facebook removed hundreds more accounts linked to a Chinese firm. This company created a fake public figure this summer, a Swiss biologist. The mysterious internet persona spread the Chinese Communist Party's narrative and accused the U.S. of interfering in the search for the origin of COVID-19 or the CCP virus. That's until recently, when Facebook researchers found this so-called expert had been created by a Chinese tech company. The firm, called the Sichuan Silence Information Technology, did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Facebook removed more than 500 accounts linked to the firm on Wednesday. Going by the non-Swiss name Wilson Edwards, the so-called expert had been widely quoted in July by Chinese state media as a whistleblower. But a month later, Chinese media removed those articles after the Swiss embassy said this person probably doesn't exist and called the news false. According to Facebook's report, the campaign has targeted English-speaking audiences in the UK and US and Chinese-speaking audiences in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Tibet. But it adds the campaign was largely unsuccessful. On Thursday, another social media giant also joined the action. Twitter removed more than 2,000 accounts connected to Chinese information campaigns. These accounts aim to counter accusations that the regime is suppressing Uyghurs in the Xinjiang region. The U.S. stock market regulator finalized a rule today that updates audit requirements. Now, Chinese companies that list on U.S. stock exchanges have to disclose whether they're owned or controlled by the Chinese regime. Otherwise, they may be delisted. They also have to provide evidence of their auditing inspections. The law was initially passed in 2020 after Chinese authorities repeatedly refused inspections by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Then the Chinese company Luckin Coffee fired its CEO after an internal fraud probe, which increased calls for action. Now, the rule can kick off more than 200 companies from U.S. exchanges if they don't follow the new rule. It could also make Chinese companies less attractive for American investors.
China's coal supply shortage has led to a return of an old-time commodity, ration coupons. That's after enduring prolonged, widespread outages. A China affairs analyst speaks with NTD.
China is reintroducing its old-time food ration coupon system, but this time it's for something else. According to a Chinese media report last week, ahead of winter, the local energy bureau in northern China's Shaanxi province announced a new currency for fuel, a coal coupon.
There is often a great shortage of certain goods or materials when this happens.
Since May, a wide swath of the country has suffered outages due to coal shortages. The situation worsened in September, and the power to many factories was cut abruptly. But China recently claimed its coal supply shortage had eased significantly. Shaanxi is China's largest coal-producing region. Yet the local government there still implemented the coal coupon to limit supply. A worker at the local bureau told a Chinese media outlet that the new coupon works just like the food ration coupons from the past.
The coal coupon, in fact, is the first example of the revival of the rationing system and planned economy.
Back in the 1950s, China began issuing specific coupons for food, clothes, oil, and even bicycles. Without them, people could not purchase the goods. This lasted more than 40 years. Tang says this system enforces a national monopoly facilitated by a planned economy.
It's everything from the production to sale and price, all monopolized by the government, controlled by the government, and then rationed to certain residents according to the government's planned economy.
Tang says the planned economy is characterized by backward productivity, which prompted authorities to issue ration coupons to limit consumption. The coupon system was phased out after China transformed from a centrally planned economy to a market economy from the West.
So China's economy has improved. That is, everyone's lives have improved, and the ration coupon system has pulled out.
But now it's starting to make a comeback in China.
It reflects from one side that the overall environment of China's current economy is rapidly declining, so some local governments have to reconsider the use of a planned economy model.
Tang adds if China's economy can't recover, the rationing system may spread to other sectors sooner or later.
Up next, Germany bars its unvaccinated population from accessing all but the most essential businesses. And they're taking steps to make the vaccine mandatory. And the boss of Pfizer says COVID vaccinations could become an annual event. He's unapologetic for the profits pharmaceutical companies are making from the pandemic. Find out more in just a moment here on NTD News. Germany today imposed heavy restrictions on its unvaccinated population. The country's leaders also agreed to pass legislation to make the COVID-19 vaccine mandatory. Here are the details.
Around 31% of Germany's population is now barred from accessing all but the most essential businesses, such as grocery stores and pharmacies. That's because they aren't vaccinated from the CCP virus. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, her likely successor Olaf Scholz, and all state leaders agreed to the new restrictions. The restrictions don't apply to those who are vaccinated or those with proof of recovery from a COVID-19 infection. The German leaders also agreed to pass legislation to make vaccination mandatory. Merkel said an ethics committee will be asked to draft the legislation. She added that if approved in Parliament, mandatory vaccination could become effective around February 2022. The German Chancellor said the new measures aim to lower infection rates and lessen the burden on the country's health system amid the fourth wave of the virus. As of Thursday, Germany saw 73,000 new infections and 388 deaths. Merkel said indoor nightclubs and music venues will be closed if cases reach 350 per 100,000 people over 7 days. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
And going to Austria. Facing a renewed lockdown and looming vaccination mandate, thousands of Austrians protested against the government's ever-tightening COVID policies on Wednesday. Demonstrators said the measures unjustly infringe on basic freedoms. Our sister media, the Epoch Times, was in Vienna to find out more. This report comes from NTD's Eddie Aitken.
On Wednesday, thousands of Austrians came out in protest in front of the local parliaments of all of Austria's 9 states, including Vienna. They rallied against a lockdown and plans for COVID vaccination mandate. The government is working on a law for Austria to become the first European country to make vaccines compulsory, starting in February. People said the lockdown and the mandate violate the Austrian constitution and unjustly infringe on basic rights. The organizers deliberately chose a weekday to send a message, encouraging people to walk off the job.
To deprive the system of one's own labour is a very powerful tool, a very powerful form of pressure, especially when it involves occupational groups that are essential to the system. We are all free beings. We are born free in this world. The least freedom we all have is our body. And from that point on, an absolute red line is crossed for me. If experimental untested vaccines are to be imposed on me, to permanently take away my own free decision here for the rest of my life, and not only from me, but also from my children. And as you can see in the UK, the time between booster vaccinations is now reduced to half. That means booster vaccinations are to be given every 3 months. Whether this compulsory vaccination will still work, whether everyone will put up with it. 12 vaccinations within 3 years?
They totally failed to give people who were sick at home medication in time. or to care for them properly. And of course, they ended up in the intensive care units, some with pre-existing conditions.
There is no scientific discourse. Normally, science is based on thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and this is no longer happening at all. The government has locked itself into one track and is not prepared to accept any of the scientific facts.
God has given us a brain that should be used. It's a pity that so many people have been involved from the beginning. So that's why I see this as a chance for us to fight against the mandate, because if we don't, it will happen to the whole of Europe.
Organisers say they plan a large demonstration in Vienna this Saturday. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
The CEO of Pfizer says COVID shots could become an annual event and that he wants them for children too. But global health experts question the UK's booster campaign and whether it will provide any protection for healthy individuals. Oxfam and other charities say the profit Pfizer and other pharmaceutical companies are making from the pandemic is immoral. And a news website reports that the chair of Reuters, an organization that provides news to billions, is also a Pfizer board member.
The boss of the pharmaceutical giant Pfizer says annual COVID vaccines are likely to be needed. Dr. Albert Bourla told the BBC this could boost population immunity and that his company is already working on a new jab for the new Omicron variant. Bourla also said immunising 5 to 11-year-olds would also be a very good idea. Meanwhile, international health charities say the profit the pharmaceutical companies are making from the pandemic is immoral. Last month, Oxfam said that Pfizer, BioNTech and Moderna are making a combined profit of nearly £50,000 every minute, or £70 million per day. But Bourla told the BBC the bottom line is millions of lives were saved and was unapologetic about making a profit. It comes after news that the UK government will offer all adults a booster shot by the end of January. But global health leaders are questioning the UK's booster campaign. Dr. Mike Ryan from the World Health Organization says the real risk of severe disease, hospitalization and death is with vulnerable, not healthy individuals.
There is no evidence that I'm aware of that would suggest that boosting the entire population is going to necessarily provide any greater protection for otherwise healthy individuals against hospitalization or death.
The National Pulse reported this week that the chairman of Reuters news agency is a Pfizer board member and top investor. The website says this raises serious conflict of interest concerns, since Reuters regularly reports on Pfizer products. Reuters provides news to billions of people. Joy Felix, NTD News.
Coming up, the first painting ever to be included on a British postage stamp is now on display at the National Gallery in London. The work is known all over the world as the Red Boy. And you may have the chance to rent the house featured in the movie Home Alone. And it'll cost you just $25. But it's available for one night only. Find out more in just a moment here on NTD News.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, the CEO of MyPillow. Cancel culture has not only affected myself and MyPillow, but millions of you out there. My employees and I want to personally thank each and every one of you for all of your support. At MyPillow, we not only have pillows, but we have hundreds of products, including my new slippers, bathrobes, sleepwear, and my new beds. We're offering the best gifts ever for the best prices ever. For example, we have this exclusive offer on the standard size MyPillows, regularly $69.98, now only $19.98 with your promo code. We also have the queen size MyPillows, regularly $79.98, now only $24.98 with your promo code. And we have the king size, regularly $89.98, now only $29.98 with your promo code. So go to mypillow.com now and use the promo code on your screen or call the 1-800 number below to receive this exclusive offer.
The first painting ever to be included on a British postage stamp is now on display at the National Gallery in London. The work, known all over the world as The Red Boy, was acquired by the gallery at a special price of £9 million.
After a period of conservation, the 1825 portrait of Charles William Lambton by Thomas Lawrence goes on display alongside the work of other British artists such as Gainsborough. The National Gallery says the portrait is of outstanding significance for national British heritage.
This portrait of a young Charles Lambton was painted when Lawrence was the leading British portrait painter of the early 19th century. Considered a masterpiece, the painting was commissioned by Lambton's father, the 1st Earl of Durham. Christine Riding is curator for the exhibition.
Lawrence emerges in the late 1780s as the heir to Thomas Gainsborough and Joshua Reynolds as the society portrait painter. And the collection at the National Gallery is very rich in the portraits that he painted in the early part of his career. So this painting from 1825 is at a moment when Thomas Lawrence is absolutely at the top of his game.
Lawrence was celebrated across Europe by kings, queens and members of the aristocracy, but some were not so welcoming.
But it's also a painting that made quite a stir when it was exhibited in Paris in 1827 and actually caused a bit of a row between the French school, those that were very pro the influence of British painting and those that had just emerged from the Napoleonic War period thinking, why, we're having another invasion by a British army of artists. So it's sort of a really critical moment, I suppose, for the reception of British painting across Europe.
Lawrence placed his young sitter outdoors at night, overlooking the sea with moonlight reflected on the water. Riding says this shows his transitory nature.
He looks like he's sort of run away from home. He seems to have a little, almost like a Dick Whittington sort of scarf to his left, where he's got little, his little personal belongings, and off he goes wandering into the distance. And it's all part of that idea of, I suppose, childhood and the emergence of interest in childhood as a distinct moment in the life of a young person, and also the idea of the sublime and the idea of nature and this sort of communing with nature.
The gallery suggests Lawrence may have intended to show the young boy on the cusp of a journey through life, but there is a sad side to this.
Charles Lambton actually doesn't achieve adulthood. He dies at the age of 13 because of tuberculosis. So we know that. Of course, he doesn't know that at this moment. So there seems to be all kinds of promise of a little lad going into the world of adulthood, but in fact he never achieves adulthood, which is very sad.
The gallery currently has 5 portraits by Sir Thomas Lawrence.
The Red Boy is glowing after its conservation and sure to catch the attention of visitors. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, London.
Being home for the holidays is great. For 90s movies fans, being home alone for the holidays might be even better. Airbnb is banking on it, hosting a one-night-only stay in the festive film-famous house. Here's the details.
Happy holidays, you filthy animals! The house made famous by the Christmas classic Home Alone will play host to guests for a night this holiday season. I know, right? The Chicago area home, still frozen in its silver screen state, will host an overnight stay via Airbnb on December 12th for the ridiculously low price of only $25. That's only a few bucks more than Kevin's grocery bill.
1983.
Man, those were the days, huh? Many are expected to try, but only one will win the 4-guest booking, complete with all the trimmings like faux booby traps that you can set, a candlelit mac and cheese dinner, and an up-close and personal meet and greet with a real tarantula.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selective videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.